The Battle of Cerro Gordo, fought on April 18, 1847, was a decisive engagement during the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. This battle marked a significant turning point in the conflict, as it opened the path for American forces under General Winfield Scott to advance toward Mexico City. The battle took place near the village of Cerro Gordo, in the rugged terrain of the Sierra Madre Oriental Mountains in Veracruz, Mexico. It showcased the tactical brilliance of the American commanders and the challenges faced by the Mexican army in defending their homeland. This article delves into the historical background, the strategic importance of Cerro Gordo, the key figures involved, the battle itself, and its aftermath. By examining these aspects, we gain a deeper understanding of how this battle shaped the course of the Mexican-American War and its long-term implications for both nations. Historical context: the Mexican-American War. To understand the significance of the Battle of Cerro Gordo, it is essential to explore the broader context of the Mexican-American War. This conflict arose from long-standing tensions between the United States and Mexico, primarily over territorial disputes, causes of the war. Annexation of Texas. In 1845, the United States annexed the Republic of Texas, which had declared independence from Mexico in 1836. Mexico never recognized Texas's independence and viewed its annexation as an act of aggression. Border disputes. The exact boundary between Texas and Mexico was contested. The U.S. claimed the Rio Grande as the border, while Mexico insisted it was the Nueces River. Further north, manifest destiny. The U.S. was driven by the ideology of manifest destiny, the belief that it was the nation's destiny to expand across the North American continent. This expansionist mindset fueled tensions with Mexico. Economic and political factors. The U.S. sought to acquire Mexican territories, including California and New Mexico, for their economic potential and strategic value. Outbreak of war. In April 1846, a skirmish between American and Mexican troops near the Rio Grande escalated into full-scale war. President James K. Polk declared that Mexico had shed American blood on American soil, and Congress authorized the use of military force. The strategic importance of Cerro Gordo. After securing victories in northern Mexico and capturing key cities like Monterrey, the U.S. turned its attention to central Mexico. The ultimate objective was to capture Mexico City, the capital of Mexico. To achieve this, American forces needed to advance through the challenging terrain of the Sierra Madre Oriental Mountains. The route to Mexico City. The road from the coastal city of Veracruz to Mexico City passed through the mountain pass at Cerro Gordo. This narrow pass was a natural choke point, making it an ideal defensive position for the Mexican army. Controlling Cerro Gordo was crucial for both sides. For Mexico, it was a last line of defense to prevent the Americans from advancing inland. For the U.S., capturing Cerro Gordo would open the road to Mexico City and pave the way for a decisive victory. Key figures in the battle. American commanders. General Winfield Scott, known as Old Fuss and Feathers, Scott was the commanding general of the U.S. Army. He was a seasoned veteran of the War of 1812 and a brilliant strategist. Captain Robert E. Lee, a young engineer officer who played a crucial role in scouting Mexican positions and finding a path to outflank their defenses. Lee's reconnaissance work was instrumental in the American victory. General Gideon Pillow, a divisional commander under Scott, Pillow led one of the assault columns during the battle. Mexican commanders General Antonio López de Santa Anna, the Mexican president and commanding general. Santa Anna was a controversial figure, known for his political ambition and military experience. General Manuel Maria Lombardini, a trusted subordinate of Santa Anna, Lombardini commanded one of the Mexican divisions at Cerro Gordo. The Battle of Cerro Gordo, April 18, 1847. Mexican defenses. Santa Anna positioned his army of approximately 12,000 men along the heights of Cerro Gordo. The Mexican forces fortified the pass with artillery and infantry, creating a formidable defensive line. Santa Anna believed the terrain would make it nearly impossible for the Americans to dislodge his troops. American strategy General Scott recognized that a frontal assault on the Mexican positions would be costly and likely unsuccessful. Instead, he devised a plan to outflank the Mexican army. Captain Robert E. Lee's reconnaissance revealed a hidden path that could be used to attack the Mexican left flank. The flanking maneuver. On the morning of April 18, American forces launched their attack. While one division under General David Twiggs engaged the Mexicans head-on, another division, led by General Gideon Pillow, executed the flanking maneuver. The Americans climbed the steep slopes and surprised the Mexican defenders, who were unprepared for an attack from this direction. Collapse of Mexican defenses. The flanking attack caused chaos among the Mexican troops. As the Americans gained the high ground, the Mexican positions became untenable. Santa Anna, realizing the danger, ordered a retreat, but the disorganized withdrawal turned into a rout. The Mexican army suffered heavy casualties, and many soldiers were captured. Aftermath and significance. Casualties. Mexican forces, approximately 1,000 killed or wounded, and 3,000 captured. American forces, around 400 killed or wounded. Strategic outcome. The American victory at Cerro Gordo opened the road to Mexico City. Scott's army continued its advance, eventually capturing the Mexican capital in September 1847. The battle demonstrated the effectiveness of American tactics and the importance of reconnaissance and flanking maneuvers. Long-term implications. End of the war. The fall of Mexico City led to the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, which ended the war. Mexico ceded vast territories, including present-day California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, to the United States. Legacy of the battle. The Battle of Cerro Gordo is remembered as a classic example of military strategy and leadership. It also highlighted the challenges faced by the Mexican army in defending its territory against a well-organized and determined opponent. The Battle of Cerro Gordo was a pivotal moment in the Mexican-American War, showcasing the tactical brilliance of General Winfield Scott and the resilience of the American forces. By overcoming the formidable Mexican defenses, the U.S. Army secured a path to Mexico City and ultimately achieved victory in the war. The battle's legacy endures as a testament to the importance of strategy, leadership, and adaptability in military operations. The Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848, was a pivotal conflict in the history of North America, shaping the territorial boundaries of the United States and Mexico. Among the many military engagements of the war, the campaign led by General Winfield Scott against General Antonio López de Santa Anna stands out as a masterclass in strategic planning, logistics, and tactical execution. Scott's campaign, which culminated in the capture of Mexico City, was a testament to his ability to outmaneuver Santa Anna's defenses, despite being outnumbered and operating in hostile territory. This article delves into the intricacies of Scott's strategy, examining how he managed to overcome Santa Anna's formidable defenses and achieve a decisive victory. Background: the Mexican-American War. To understand the significance of Scott's campaign, it is essential to provide some context about the Mexican-American War. The conflict arose from the annexation of Texas by the United States in 1845, which Mexico viewed as a provocation. Tensions escalated, leading to open hostilities in 1846. The war was fought on multiple fronts, including Texas, California, and northern Mexico, but the most critical theater of operations was central Mexico, where the capital, Mexico City, was located. The United States, under President James K. Polk, sought to secure territorial concessions from Mexico, including California and New Mexico. To achieve this, the U.S. needed to exert military pressure on Mexico, and the capture of Mexico City was seen as the key to forcing Mexico to the negotiating table. This task fell to General Winfield Scott, one of the most experienced and capable officers in the U.S. Army. The opposing commanders, Winfield Scott versus Santa Anna. Winfield Scott, known as Old Fuss and Feathers for his strict adherence to military discipline and protocol, was a veteran of the War of 1812 and the Black Hawk War. By the time of the Mexican-American War, Scott was one of the most respected military leaders in the United States. His strategic acumen, combined with his ability to inspire and lead troops, made him the ideal choice for the daunting task of invading central Mexico. Scott's approach to warfare was characterized by meticulous planning, careful consideration of logistics, and a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances. He understood the importance of maintaining supply lines, securing bases of operation, and leveraging the strengths of his forces while exploiting the weaknesses of his enemy. Antonio López de Santa Anna, often referred to as the Napoleon of the West, was a charismatic and controversial figure in Mexican history. He had served multiple terms as President of Mexico and was a seasoned military leader, having fought in numerous conflicts, including the Texas Revolution. Santa Anna was known for his boldness, cunning, and ability to rally troops, but he was also prone to overconfidence and strategic miscalculations. Santa Anna's defense of Mexico was based on his belief that the rugged terrain, combined with the numerical superiority of his forces, would be sufficient to repel the American invasion. However, his over-reliance on static defenses and his underestimation of Scott's strategic brilliance would prove to be his undoing. The strategic landscape, Central Mexico presented a challenging environment for any invading force. The region was characterized by mountainous terrain, dense forests, and limited roads, making movement and supply difficult. Additionally, the Mexican population was largely hostile to the American invaders, further complicating Scott's task. The key to capturing Mexico City lay in securing a route through the Central Highlands, which were defended by a series of fortified positions. Santa Anna had established a network of defenses, including fortresses, trenches, and artillery emplacements, designed to slow down and ultimately halt the American advance. Scott's challenge was to navigate this treacherous landscape, overcome Santa Anna's defenses, and reach the Mexican capital. Scott's strategy. The plan of campaign. Scott's strategy for the invasion of central Mexico was based on a combination of boldness, innovation, and careful planning. His plan can be broken down into several key components. 1. Amphibious landing at Veracruz. The first step in Scott's campaign was to establish a secure base of operations on the Mexican coast. He chose Veracruz, a major port city on the Gulf of Mexico, as the landing site. Veracruz was heavily fortified, but Scott believed that a successful amphibious assault would provide the U.S. forces with a critical foothold and a supply base for the campaign inland. The landing at Veracruz, conducted in March 1847, was a remarkable feat of military engineering and coordination. Scott's forces, numbering around 12,000 men, were transported by a fleet of U.S. Navy ships and landed under the cover of naval gunfire. The city was besieged, and after a brief but intense bombardment, Veracruz surrendered on March 29, 1847. Securing the route to Mexico City with Veracruz under American control, Scott's next objective was to secure the route to Mexico City. This involved advancing through the Central Highlands, a region dominated by the Sierra Madre Oriental mountain range. The terrain was rugged, and the roads were narrow and easily defensible. Santa Anna had established a series of defensive positions along the route, including the fortress of Cerro Gordo, which was considered impregnable. Scott's approach to overcoming these defenses was to outmaneuver Santa Anna rather than engage in costly frontal assaults. He relied on reconnaissance, intelligence gathering, and the expertise of his engineers to identify weak points in the Mexican defenses. At Cerro Gordo, Scott's forces executed a flanking maneuver that bypassed the main Mexican positions, forcing Santa Anna to retreat and opening the road to the interior. Point 3. Maintaining supply lines. One of the most critical aspects of Scott's strategy was the maintenance of supply lines. Operating deep in enemy territory, Scott's forces were dependent on a steady flow of supplies from Veracruz. To ensure the security of these supply lines, Scott established a series of fortified positions along the route, garrisoned by small detachments of troops. These positions served as waypoints for supply convoys and provided a measure of security against Mexican guerrillas and irregular forces. Scott also recognized the importance of local resources. His forces foraged for food and supplies whenever possible, reducing their reliance on the long supply line from Veracruz. This approach allowed Scott to maintain the mobility and flexibility of his army, even as it advanced deeper into Mexico. Point 4. Psychological warfare and diplomacy. In addition to military operations, Scott employed psychological warfare and diplomacy to undermine Santa Anna's defenses. He issued proclamations to the Mexican population, assuring them that the U.S. forces were not there to conquer or oppress, but to bring peace and stability. Scott's efforts to win the hearts and minds of the local population were partially successful, reducing the level of resistance faced by his forces. Scott also engaged in diplomatic efforts to divide Santa Anna's supporters. He offered amnesty to Mexican soldiers who surrendered and sought to exploit divisions within the Mexican leadership. These efforts contributed to the erosion of Santa Anna's authority and the weakening of his defenses. 5. The final push to Mexico City. The culmination of Scott's campaign was the advance on Mexico City itself. The Mexican capital was heavily fortified, with a series of defensive positions, including the fortified hill of Chapultepec, which guarded the western approach to the city. Santa Anna had concentrated his forces in and around the city, determined to make a final stand. Scott's approach to the capture of Mexico City was characterized by a combination of boldness and caution. He avoided a direct assault on the city's defenses, instead opting to outflank and isolate the Mexican positions. The Battle of Chapultepec, fought on September 13, 1847, was a pivotal engagement. Scott's forces, including a contingent of U.S. Marines, stormed the fortress and secured a foothold on the outskirts of the city. With Chapultepec in American hands, Scott's forces advanced into Mexico City, engaging in street fighting and overcoming last-ditch resistance from Santa Anna's troops. On September 14, 1847, Mexico City fell to the U.S. forces, marking the end of Santa Anna's defense and the effective conclusion of the Mexican-American War. Analysis: how Scott outmaneuvered Santa Anna. Scott's success in outmaneuvering Santa Anna's defenses can be attributed to several key factors. 1. Superior planning and logistics. Scott's meticulous planning and attention to logistics were critical to his success. He understood the importance of securing a reliable supply line and establishing a secure base of operations at Veracruz. His ability to maintain the flow of supplies and reinforcements allowed his forces to sustain the campaign deep in enemy territory. 2. Flexibility and adaptability. Scott demonstrated a remarkable ability to adapt to changing circumstances. He was willing to alter his plans based on new intelligence and the evolving tactical situation. This flexibility was evident in his decision to bypass the heavily fortified positions at Cerro Gordo, and his innovative use of flanking maneuvers to outmaneuver Santa Anna's defenses. 3. Effective use of intelligence and reconnaissance. Scott's success was also due to his effective use of intelligence and reconnaissance. He relied on scouts, engineers, and local informants to gather information about the terrain and the disposition of Mexican forces. This intelligence allowed him to identify weak points in Santa Anna's defenses and exploit them to his advantage. 4. Psychological warfare and diplomacy. Scott's use of psychological warfare and diplomacy played a significant role in undermining Santa Anna's defenses. By appealing to the Mexican population and offering amnesty to surrendering soldiers, Scott was able to reduce the level of resistance faced by his forces and weaken Santa Anna's hold on power. 5. Boldness and decisiveness. Finally, Scott's boldness and decisiveness were key to his success. He was willing to take calculated risks, such as the amphibious landing at Veracruz and the flanking maneuver at Cerro Gordo, to achieve his objectives. His ability to make quick decisions and act decisively in the face of uncertainty allowed him to stay one step ahead of Santa Anna. Winfield. Scott's campaign in central Mexico during the Mexican-American War was a masterclass in military strategy and execution. Through a combination of superior planning, flexibility, effective use of intelligence, psychological warfare, and boldness, Scott was able to outmaneuver Santa Anna's defenses and achieve a decisive victory. The capture of Mexico City not only secured the U.S. position in the war, but also demonstrated the importance of strategic thinking and adaptability in military operations. Scott's legacy as one of America's greatest military leaders is firmly rooted in his success in this campaign, which remains a model of effective military strategy to this day. The Battle of Cerro Gordo, fought on April 18, 1847, during the Mexican-American War, stands as a pivotal moment in the conflict. This battle not only demonstrated the strategic brilliance of American military leadership, but also highlighted the critical role that engineers played in securing victory. The American forces, under the command of General Winfield Scott, faced a formidable Mexican defense led by General Antonio López de Santa Anna. The Mexican army had entrenched itself in a strong defensive position on the high ground of Cerro Gordo, making a direct assault nearly impossible. However, the ingenuity and expertise of American engineers, particularly those led by Captain Robert E. Lee, were instrumental in overcoming these challenges and securing a decisive victory. This article will explore the multifaceted role of engineers in the American victory at Cerro Gordo. It will delve into the strategic planning, reconnaissance, construction of roads and fortifications, and the innovative use of terrain that allowed the American forces to outmaneuver and defeat the Mexican army. By examining the contributions of engineers in detail, we can gain a deeper understanding of how their efforts were crucial to the success of the American campaign in Mexico. Chapter 1: The Strategic Importance of Cerro Gordo. The Mexican-American War context. The Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848, was a conflict between the United States and Mexico that arose from territorial disputes following the U.S. annexation of Texas in 1845. The war was marked by a series of battles and campaigns that ultimately led to the U.S. gaining control of vast territories, including present-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and parts of Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Texas. The Battle of Cerro Gordo was part of General Winfield Scott's campaign to capture Mexico City, the capital of Mexico. Scott's strategy involved landing his forces at Veracruz, securing the port, and then advancing inland towards Mexico City. Cerro Gordo, a mountain pass located approximately 50 miles northwest of Veracruz, was a critical choke point on the route to the capital. Control of this pass was essential for both sides, as it would determine the success or failure of Scott's campaign. The Mexican defensive position. General Santa Anna, aware of the strategic importance of Cerro Gordo, had chosen the location carefully. The Mexican army occupied the high ground, with artillery positions overlooking the main road that passed through the narrow valley. The terrain was rugged, with steep slopes and dense vegetation, making it difficult for an attacking force to maneuver. Santa Anna had also constructed a series of fortifications, including trenches, breastworks, and artillery emplacements, to strengthen his defensive position. The Mexican forces numbered around 12,000 men, while the American army under Scott had approximately 8,500 troops. Despite being outnumbered, Scott was determined to press forward, recognizing that a victory at Cerro Gordo would open the path to Mexico City. Chapter 2: The Role of Engineers in the American Campaign. The importance of engineers in 19th-century warfare. In the 19th century, military engineers played a crucial role in warfare. Their responsibilities included reconnaissance, fortification construction, road building, and the planning of siege operations. Engineers were essential for overcoming natural obstacles, such as rivers, mountains, and dense forests, which could impede the movement of troops and supplies. They were also responsible for designing and constructing defensive works to protect armies from enemy attacks. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, established in 1802, was a key component of the American military. During the Mexican-American War, the Corps of Engineers was tasked with supporting the Army's operations by providing technical expertise and engineering solutions to the challenges posed by the Mexican terrain and defenses. The engineers of the American Army at Cerro Gordo, the American engineers were led by Captain Robert E. Lee, who would later become one of the most famous generals of the Confederate Army during the American Civil War. Lee was a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, where he had excelled in engineering. His skills and leadership would prove invaluable in the upcoming battle. In addition to Lee, other notable engineers who played significant roles at Cerro Gordo included Lieutenant P.G.T. Beauregard, Lieutenant George B. McClellan, and Lieutenant Isaac I. Stevens. These officers, along with their teams of engineers, were responsible for conducting reconnaissance, planning the attack, and constructing the necessary infrastructure to support the American advance. Chapter 3, Reconnaissance and Intelligence Gathering. The challenge of reconnaissance. One of the first tasks faced by the American engineers was to conduct a thorough reconnaissance of the Mexican defensive positions. The rugged terrain and dense vegetation made it difficult to gather accurate intelligence about the enemy's fortifications and troop dispositions. Additionally, the Mexican forces had established pickets and outposts to detect and repel any American scouts. Despite these challenges, the engineers, led by Captain Lee, embarked on a series of daring reconnaissance missions to map the Mexican defenses and identify potential weaknesses. These missions were conducted under the cover of darkness and required the engineers to navigate through difficult terrain while avoiding detection by Mexican patrols. The discovery of a flanking route. During one of these reconnaissance missions, Captain Lee made a critical discovery. He identified a narrow, hidden path that led around the left flank of the Mexican defenses. This path, which was not heavily guarded, offered the possibility of outflanking the Mexican army and attacking them from an unexpected direction. Lee's discovery was a turning point in the planning of the American attack. General Scott recognized the potential of this flanking route and decided to base his strategy on exploiting this weakness in the Mexican defenses. The engineers' ability to gather accurate intelligence and identify a viable route of attack was crucial to the success of the American plan. Chapter 4, Planning the Attack. The American battle plan. With the information gathered by the engineers, General Scott devised a battle plan that involved a two-pronged attack on the Mexican positions. The main American force, under the command of General David E. Twiggs, would advance along the main road and engage the Mexican defenses head-on. Meanwhile, a smaller force, led by General Gideon J. Pillow, would use the flanking route discovered by Captain Lee to attack the Mexican left flank. The success of this plan depended on precise coordination between the two American columns and the ability of the flanking force to navigate the difficult terrain and launch a surprise attack. The engineers played a key role in ensuring that both elements of the plan could be executed effectively. The role of engineers in the flanking movement. The flanking movement required the construction of a road that could support the movement of troops, artillery, and supplies. The engineers, under the direction of Captain Lee, were tasked with building this road quickly and efficiently. This involved clearing vegetation, leveling the ground, and constructing bridges over streams and ravines. The engineers worked tirelessly to complete the road, often under fire from Mexican skirmishers. Their efforts allowed the flanking force to move into position without being detected, setting the stage for a successful attack. Chapter 5. The Battle of Cerro Gordo. The initial assault on the morning of April 18, 1847, the American forces launched their attack. The main column, under General Twiggs, advanced along the main road and engaged the Mexican defenses. The Mexican artillery, positioned on the high ground, inflicted heavy casualties on the American troops. However, the American artillery, under the command of Captain John Bankhead Magruder, returned fire and began to suppress the Mexican guns. Meanwhile, the flanking force, led by General Pillow and guided by Captain Lee, began its advance along the newly constructed road. The engineers had done their job well, and the flanking force was able to move into position without being detected by the Mexican defenders. The flanking attack. As the flanking force reached its designated position, it launched a surprise attack on the Mexican left flank. The Mexican troops, caught off guard by the sudden assault, were unable to mount an effective defense. The American forces quickly overran the Mexican positions, capturing key artillery pieces and forcing the Mexican troops to retreat. The success of the flanking attack was a direct result of the engineers' efforts. Their ability to construct a road that allowed the flanking force to move into position undetected was crucial to the success of the attack. Additionally, the engineers' reconnaissance work had identified the weak point in the Mexican defenses, allowing the American forces to exploit it effectively. The collapse of the Mexican defense. With the collapse of their left flank, the Mexican defenses began to crumble. The American forces, now advancing from both the front and the flank, overwhelmed the Mexican troops. General Santa Anna, realizing that his position was untenable, ordered a retreat. The Mexican army fled in disarray, abandoning their artillery, supplies, and wounded. The American victory at Cerro Gordo was complete. The Mexican army suffered heavy casualties, with estimates ranging from 1,000 to 1,200 killed and wounded, while the Americans lost around 400 men. The battle opened the road to Mexico City and marked a significant turning point in the Mexican-American War. Chapter 6. The aftermath and legacy of the battle. The strategic impact of the battle. The American victory at Cerro Gordo had far-reaching strategic implications. The battle effectively broke the Mexican defensive line and opened the path for General Scott's advance on Mexico City. The capture of the Mexican capital would ultimately lead to the end of the war and the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, which ceded vast territories to the United States. The battle also demonstrated the importance of engineering in modern warfare. The American engineers' ability to overcome the challenges posed by the terrain and the Mexican defenses was a key factor in the victory. Their work at Cerro Gordo set a precedent for the role of engineers in future conflicts, including the American Civil War. The legacy of the engineers who served at Cerro Gordo went on to have distinguished careers in the U.S. Army. Captain Robert E. Lee, in particular, would become one of the most famous military leaders in American history. His experience at Cerro Gordo, where he demonstrated his skill in reconnaissance and engineering, would serve him well in the years to come. Other engineers who served at Cerro Gordo, such as P.G.T. Beauregard, George B. McClellan, and Isaac I. Stevens, would also play significant roles in the American Civil War. Their experiences in Mexico shaped their understanding of military engineering and influenced their approach to warfare. The Battle of Cerro Gordo in historical memory. The Battle of Cerro Gordo is remembered as a testament to the ingenuity and determination of the American forces. The engineers' contributions to the victory are often highlighted as an example of the importance of technical expertise in military operations. The battle also serves as a reminder of the complexities and challenges of warfare in the 19th century, where terrain and logistics often played a decisive role. In Mexico, the battle is remembered as a moment of national tragedy, where the country's defenses were overcome by a superior enemy. The loss at Cerro Gordo was a blow to Mexican morale and marked the beginning of the end for Santa Anna's leadership. The Battle of Cerro Gordo was a defining moment in the Mexican-American War, and the role of engineers in securing the American victory cannot be overstated. From reconnaissance and intelligence gathering to the construction of roads and fortifications, the engineers were instrumental in overcoming the challenges posed by the terrain and the Mexican defenses. Their efforts allowed the American forces to outmaneuver and defeat a larger and well-entrenched enemy, paving the way for the eventual capture of Mexico City and the end of the war. The legacy of the engineers who served at Cerro Gordo extends beyond the battle itself. Their contributions to the American victory demonstrated the importance of engineering in modern warfare and set a precedent for the role of engineers in future conflicts. The Battle of Cerro Gordo remains a powerful example of how technical expertise, ingenuity, and determination can turn the tide of battle and shape the course of history.